Hi everyone, welcome to this MedDevice podcast on startups. I'm Kalaiarasi Sivaji, founder of Thremear, where we build early diagnostics on for women. Today's conversation is slightly different because we are talking about technology as well as the innovation that also that brings the impact in many of the lives. I'm really excited to welcome Mr. Aadhar Bhalinge, founder of AudiVision, a startup that transforms how visually impaired individuals access the printed materials through AI-driven solutions. It's great to have you here, Aadhar. Welcome.
Thank you, Kalaiarasi. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure.
Sure. So, before starting, I would like to start with your brief introduction. So, how did you become a founder from your journey?
Right, that's an interesting question to begin with. Yes, and that there is a story behind it. So I will just quickly try to talk about it. So I have before starting up AudiVision, I was working at a financial firm as a vice president for almost 13 years. So that was a long journey, and obviously switching from that comfortable journey into the startup domain was challenging in itself. Apart from the various startup challenges that obviously we all have to face. And the background to it was that since childhood, I have high myopia of approximately -10 power. So I did understand to a certain extent what are the challenges faced by the visually impaired community, and especially those who are having even more severe, visual impairment than what I have. So, with a technical background, and I am a software developer. Had done my education from VZTI Mumbai, and that's where. So I always felt that I have to do something, put my skills to some bigger purpose and to giving back to the society. So that lingering thought was always there, and finally, around 3 years back, I decided to make that switch because getting into startup to make something tangible, to make something impactful, you cannot consider that as a side project on weekends, which obviously I started with that when I was working earlier. But as the product started growing, as the user feedback started flowing in, the need was there, the requirement was there. When that was pretty much clear, at that time, we decided to make a switch. We decided to fully dedicate time for AudiVision, and that's how AudiVision as a solution came into picture. So that's the background about the whole solution.
Yeah. So for our viewers, just want you to ask, like, what exact problem that you are trying to solve in audition?
Right. So it's as I earlier mentioned, the solution is for visually impaired and blind. So what is the most important factor for any of us, right? It is the access to information. This is a fundamental right for all of us, and that applies equally to every individual around us. So the challenge that we saw is that even right now, when a lot of data, whether they are documents or otherwise, are being digitally converted, or they are available in digital format, there is still a lot of existing and new documents being generated which are physical. They are printed documents, and access to that documents for the visually impaired community is still a challenge. And this is a challenge, and that affects a lot of aspects in your daily life, whether it is education, whether it is employment, whether it's day-to-day living. So it basically impacts your day-to-day quality of life. So understanding this challenge, we realize, okay, so we need to create a solution. Also, at the same time, not to reinvent the existing, the solutions that they are. So we understood the key gaps with the current market, with the current solutions, and that's when the AudioVision came into picture, where we are developing a low cost, completely offline reading solution for printed documents, and also the digital documents that can be read. But that's the whole crux of the solution.
So how did you validate that this problem of near eyesighted or this visually impaired people,
Right.
especially in Indian context, how that will help? Because as you tell about the low cost solution also, so how do you think that impact in the Indian mindset or a people. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. So, and you correctly pointed out, because there is no one size that fits all. Correct. So, not all existing solutions are going to fit everyone across the globe. And especially in India, where we have such a diverse culture with diverse languages that are being, as a printed documents also, then there are equally that diverse amount of languages printed on the documents. And whether it is educational books, the need for native languages and access to it, that is really challenging in our country and subcontinent. So a specific curated solution is required. And the existing solutions are there, but most of them require internet availability. And secondly, even if they are available, they are extremely expensive. So the solutions ranging from 2-3 lakhs to anywhere above that. So which is very difficult for our community to access because they are so expensive. So there are these three needs that we realized. So one is the availability of the solution in diverse languages, specifically the Indian languages. Secondly, the solution should work without internet, because you might be even surprised that even right now, approximately 50% of the world do not have access to internet. And that especially applies even to the Asian and the Indian continent here. So that was the second problem that we wanted to address. And the third was that the costing, as I said, we want to make the solution affordable, only then will it be accessible to all. So with these three things in mind, we started developing AudiVision, and we ensured that we did the various user trials, we talked to the community, we gathered their feedback, we understood what they want. Because one of the challenges being a technologist is that you, as a technologist, you are always very excited about the technology, about the new things, how cool technology is there. But it is important to keep the balance and to understand whether, although technology and the advancement is important, but at the same time, what is the need for the market? What is the need for the users? You need to listen to that, and based on that, we gathered that user validation, and then we decided, yes, we are on the right path, and made the required changes based on those feedbacks, and we continued with our journey.
As you stress about this user validation, I'm keen to know like what are the early assumptions that you made like turn out to be wrong while building this product? Because with a great vision you are starting and you know the pain point actually, but some of the assumptions that we have made would have gone wrong. So what were
Yes.
they?
Certainly. And as an entrepreneur, we are always, as I said, we are very enthusiastic about our product. It's our child, our baby, and it is so we put a lot of efforts and focus during our initial phase completely on the product development. But product development alone is not going to help sale or get adopted in the market. This is something that we learned during our journey, that something the adoption requires user validation, it requires building trust, it requires partnerships. So all of that needs to be going in parallel, if possible, as early as possible during the product development life cycle.
Yeah, but I understand that as you come from financial banking sector with no
Mm.
much of technical background, how did you manage to build such a product? And even with much of technicians around you, how do you have explained about this a need actually? So I understand about the solution that you are building, but how do you explain the process? For example, let's say we have a people,
Mm.
students, or who are visually impaired, how does that help during their studies, or what is the product that actually, like is that a hardware or is the software combined? What is actually for a non-technical background? How do you explain how it works?
Yes, certainly. So see, it is, as I mentioned, we understand what we are trying to build is to have access to the physical documents. And as I mentioned, right, the documents are everywhere. For a student, for example, while he or she is studying, they need access to the books, and not all books are converted to Braille, or not all books are available in audio mode. So what do we do that in office also? You get a lot of training material, you have a lot of memos, you have a lot of client documents, which are all in physical format. So let's understand how it is in currently, right? So currently, what happens is such a user will go and take help of a sighted person. They will ask, okay, this is my document, please help me read it aloud, or either convert it into a digital format. Now, it is fine as if it is a one or two pager, but when it comes to documents, books, love, and every time, so it when it comes to books, we have taken real feedback from the students, and they say that when we want to convert a book, it take almost 1 to 2 months, because it's all about volunteers and the volunteers' time that they take out. And these volunteers are the students from the college itself. They have their own studies, their own examinations. Out of that, they will take time out, and then gradually they will convert it into a required digital format. This creates two main issues, right? Because first of all, you have a dependency on others. Why shall anybody have a dependency for such a simple basic task? Is to have access to information. As I said, access to information is right for all. So that we wanted to remove that dependency. And second is the time, because even if, let's say, somebody is ready available, it takes a lot of time, 2 months for just one book. You are wasting your precious time in all of it. So how to give independence to the users? So what our solution does is, it it is a combination of a software and hardware. So it is a mobile application, which is the brain, you can consider. It has all the complex logic of AI, machine learning, optical character recognition, etc., and the camera itself, the which is of the mobile phone. And with the help of the software, and then we have a reader device which we have already patented. And this is a highly modular and very lightweight portable reader device, on which you mount the mobile application or the mobile itself, open the mobile application, and then we keep the documents, whether it's a book or a A4 document or otherwise, below that mobile camera. And then the application guides the user, because see, that's where the challenge also comes. There are existing applications there, but how, as a visually impaired person, how do they know that their document is perfectly aligned with the camera? Otherwise, most of the important challenge is that these documents become partial, because half of them are not visible in camera, and then the picture that has been captured, it is very suboptimal. And basically, if anything, the origin is suboptimal, the source is suboptimal, the results are going to be suboptimal. And if that happens, the user lose interest. They lose interest because of the subpar quality of the output, and the whole process itself becomes tedious for them and becomes sub quality, and then they lose interest in that and lose faith and trust in that. So that's what we want to change. So with the help of AI, what we do is, with the application now smart to understand whether the full document is in view or not of the camera, it guides the user that move the document to left, move the right, top right corner is not visible, etc. So such sort of smart guidance has been given, and then the user is able to correctly align the document. As soon as that happens, the software automatically captures the image, and then our as I said, our software, the AI part of it, the OCR part of it, take care of the rest. And then these results are being saved in digital format, whether it is PDF, text, and then they can read aloud. So the users are able to audibly hear the results, what there is in the document in front of them. So
That's
that's the
great. That
solution, and
interesting
that
to know.
basic,
Yeah.
yeah, and basically this solution now addresses the challenge which I talked about. The users no more need to depend upon anyone. They are totally independent in accessing the physical information. And as I said, it is highly portable. So you can, as a student, as a worker, you can take it anywhere with you. It's just within 500 grams. And finally, it's low cost. So most of the features are available. They are already free. So for a regular user, it is as good as a free app. But if somebody is really very heavy user, and obviously as a startup, we need to be sustainable. We need to keep supporting the application, the production cycle, the hardware part of it. So there is a nominal subscription fee annually that happens, and that's the whole product basically.
Yeah, that's great to learn. I mean, the product is a standalone product, and also you address the main issue of visually or any challenging perspective, that even for a person or even a technology, it's truly amazing. So
Thank you.
let's talk about the real challenges of
Mhm.
building in this space,
Right.
especially in the assistive tech or a medtech. Assistive tech is the main area, I would say. So, how do
Right.
you think this assistive tech startups in India it is growing, or whether it is getting challenged by the, I mean, other startups, or from your perspective, what makes or assistive tech startups like blooming, or what do you think so?
Right. So you're right to say the assistive tech startups in India and in general, right, has its own different pathways. I mean, and that is a bit more, I will say, challenging as compared to typical startups because your end users are a community where you have to specially cater to. You have to take care of their special needs, and at the same time you need to be commercial because you need to be
Mm.
sustainable. So it is a you are there are various challenges in this journey. But what I have observed over the past 3 4 years is that this domain in general, the assistive tech domain has got a lot of momentum, not only just in
Mm.
India, overall worldwide. And I'm happy to say that especially in India, this is even more growing at a faster rate. The challenge remains is that the end audience, right? It's not necessarily always independent of the financial limitations, right? Because especially in India, Asia, Africa, these are the kind of regions where we are looking for to target those users. And the fact is that the community is having financial limitations, and that is something we have to take into consideration during our pricing. And that impacts everything, right? When you impact pricing, you impact
Mm.
its distribution channel, you impact the marketing strategy, that impacts the sustainability. So yes, as a assistive tech, you have to really think through all of these factors and not only profit. And on the other hand, same time, let's say if some of these startups are uh, going for the investors, and there are investments that are happening. So obviously, investors are focused on the profit aspect of it, right? Because the time aspect of it, how quickly this can be done, how quickly we can make it profitable. And they are absolutely right in their own regards, because as an investor, that is their focus area. They are putting money into something and they expect the returns for it. So, so having said that, there are investors who are very well aware of this fact, and they are patient investor. There is a patient capital that we talk about. That is the need that needs to yet grow and be more mature and have more accessibility to such patient capital is required, not only just in India but across the globe. And this is what is an area which I feel needs to be worked upon more rather than what we have in the current space. So many a times what happens is that assistive technologies do miss the opportunity because user validation also you require investment, right? For the user trials, user validation, and not just that, even when the actual adoption, because this is a different space, it requires time. It is not that the whole world is available for you to for your solution and they are interested in that. You're catering to a very specific niche area, niche amount of users. So the patience is required from the development team, from the entrepreneur themselves, but also from the investors, so that finally the right outcome in the right direction is being moved, and it will take some time to reach that journey. So that is the need. But having said that, as I say, the whole space of assistive technology is uh, booming right now. There are a lot of new startups getting formed. We have personally witnessed this in past few years. And coming to your
Mm.
another question, that how it is compared to the rest, right? Because there is a challenge and there is competition from the general startups as well. And there is sometimes there is a small blur, right? Between there is overlap and blur between those boundaries. Just to give an instance, uh, earlier 5 years back, having a smart glasses who are able to talk about what is in front of you, how many people are there, what is the scenario, that was very specific to assistive technology. But now with Facebook coming into picture, they have their own meta glasses, etc. So now for such organizations, such startups, the general purpose companies and such big brands are also being a part of their competition space. And now to be competitive at the same time, have the price in check, and to exist and survive, it is challenge. So yes, assistive technology as a space is quite challenging, but it also comes with its own satisfaction when you know what is the end user impact, when they talk about how that is impacting you, their world, how they are able to progress, how they are able to access critical information. That gives the deep amount of satisfaction as a developer, as a product owner, that's what you have been built. So yes, so that's what I will say about the for this space.
Yeah, speaking about the challenges in and around the assistive tech industry as a whole. So, what are some of your the personal challenges or the mistakes that taught to you a critical lesson in the early stages as a founder? Because you have come up from a different background, building a assistive tech, which is very for a social cause. So, what are the challenges or really mistakes that you have gone through?
Correct. So, yes, it is important to understand our mistakes, not only just for us, so that the rest of the community can also learn. I have also learned from some of my dear fellow colleagues around there. So, the one of the biggest mistake is that initially, as an entrepreneur, you are focused on the product. As I mentioned, you are very much focused on the product, and you feel that once the product is built or reached to a particular stage, then you will start engaging or doing partnership with others, right? With other institutions, with relevant end users or user trials. So this is something that we need to understand, that we need to begin that in parallel as early as possible. Even if the product is not ready, that's okay. You need to publicize that. You need to build partnerships early in the stage, so that once you're ready, you are able to just go ahead. That is not a time when you start exploring what are the partnerships, where to reach out to, who are our potential collaborators. So that is something that always needs to be in your back of the mind while the product development is going on. That is one of the learnings. And the second is, you have to be a very good listener at the same time. You need to understand, you need to listen to your users, you need to listen to the end users, because at the end they are going to use your product, they are going to make it or break it, whether your solution is being success or not. And that comes from trust, and that building that trust, that needs to happen from the beginning, not necessarily when you develop a MVP. So these are the two key things where I feel that the startup entrepreneurs should begin with much earlier in their stage, and that will help them in the long run.
So, what is one thing that you wish somebody would have clearly tell about before you even started about the struggles or about the startup journey or anything, whether it is challenging or a glorifying thing? What do you
Right.
think that one thing somebody would have told you?
The one thing I would think of is that if somebody would have told me that just creating an amazing technology or a product does not necessarily sell itself. So this is something which I hope that somebody would have told me, and it all come boils back down to the same agenda which we just talked about. It is not just about developing an amazing product. It is about partnerships. It is about building trust with the users. It is about creating distribution channels well ahead in time. It's not when your product is fully developed and then you start thinking about the distribution challenge. No, it has to be at the start. You need to think about the adoption process and the unique challenges that your domain has from the beginning, so that once your product is ready, you can immediately start with the adoption. I hope somebody would have told me this probably 3 years back, and I could have saved some of my time later. But yeah, I hope others can learn from this.
Sure. Definitely. So, what is for early stage founders, let's say the people who are still listening or want to start, what is something that early stage founders should not spend money on in the initial days?
Right.
So, what do you think? So,
Correct. So one of the common misconceptions is that the more you spend on marketing, the more your product grows. And that is a myth.
so
That is absolutely a myth. Unless your product is absolutely of a great quality, your apps product is absolutely focused. So even in the as a early stage, as a owner, you need to be very clear about what is your minimal viable product, MVP. You need to be aware of what are the 3 4 core features that you want to provide to your user, build upon those features for quality, start with the user trials, talk to them one to one, and that's how it spreads through the word of mouth, and people will start recognizing your brand through that delivery and execution rather than marketing, because marketing can only get you to an extent, but if your product itself is not reaching to the end users in the way they are expecting, then all of it is totally in vain.
Mm, sure. So I understand many of the like tech startups as well as assistive tech startups don't get funded with that much easily. So when they have a limited resource, what do you think that they should be focusing on? Like any 2 or 3 priorities that should be focused on, like product building or something? Because there are many startups that needs marketing in the initial days and many startups that doesn't require also. Some
Correct.
product speaks for them in that market. So, as a assistive tech perspective, what do you think that a person who is into the assistive tech should focus on with limited resources?
Correct. And this is a great question, because every beginner, every new startup founder is always going to be in a crunch in the initial phase. And that is, or the limited resources, as you correctly mentioned. So during that time, putting those resources into the most priority order, which can be most impactful, is very critical, because otherwise, as you rightly mentioned, most of the time the founders spend a lot of time in unnecessary things, and the limited resources are also lost, and then they realize, oh, that was not even important. So, and
Mhm.
that becomes even more critical in assistive tech space. So the top three things which I believe is, first is user validation from the very first day. Now, when I say user validation, is not necessarily that you have built a prototype, go to users, show the prototype. No, that is also a next stage. First, talk to users, understand their need. You need to be very careful about what user wants, and that's where my second important points come, is listening carefully. You have to listen to those feedback, and only then you will be able to understand what is the priority for your product. And then the second stage comes, is the second important points where you need to spend a lot of time, is the building the MVP. It's not about the breadth, it is about the depth. So after getting user validation, identify those 3 4 points, 3 4 features which are most important for your users, and build that as your MVP. Do not waste resources and time and development in spreading across everything, because there is no point in being jack of all and master of none. So rather be a master of one specific area. That is the second point. And the third thing that the founders need to invest early on is partnerships, whether it is institutions, whether those are local influencers, whether from the community, whether from the outside of community. But you need to build that rapport, you need to build that partnerships from the early on, so that this then really you are utilizing whatever resources you are having to the most of your capacity.
So, yeah, as you were mentioning about the support from the ecosystem, I
Right.
want to know like what are the peer support or networking support that you got in your journey, especially if and around the assistive tech ecosystem or any
Right.
other different ecosystem that was you never thought of like this support would
Correct.
have. I never thought like this support would have come to me so that it helps me in building this product or reaching some of the milestones that you have. So any
Correct.
support system that you can mention.
Certainly. So, as a founders, obviously, we need to build that community. We need to have that connect and sharing of knowledge, because that's how we are going to learn. We are not only going to learn from the successes, but also from the failures. That what all things, so that we do not do right in future. And failures are a part of any journey. I mean, there's ups and downs are going to happen. So, sharing that, I have learned a lot from my peers, my other fellow co-founders, where they had helped me during a one-on-one conversation, or during some meetings, or during some gatherings. Like for example, There is an event called as Purple Fest, which happens every time in Goa, specifically geared towards the assistive technology. And that's where across the whole India, all of the assistive tech community comes together, the end users comes together, institutions come together to talk to each other, to know about each other, and that's how we also learn from each other, right? And that's also build the partnerships and collaboration opportunities. Similarly, we recently in this February, we had been selected. AudiVision was selected as a Zero Project awardee for 2026, and we were invited at United Nations in Austria, so which is a huge global event called as Zero Call or Zero Project, where various assistive technology startups, founders, governments, institutions, private, all come together, and we talk about assistive technology. We talk about the challenges. We talk about the solutions. And there was an immense amount of exchange in terms of knowledge, in terms of learnings that we could gain from such sessions. Those are some of the key, events which I felt has drastically impacted us in a very good way and helped us grow. So I will encourage all the community members to be a part of such events, be a part of such community gatherings, and share your knowledge, share your success, share your failures, share your experiences. That's how all of us can reach faster towards our collective goal, is to make this world a better place for all.
Sure. Definitely. And your work is deeply tied to some social impact thing. So
Right.
in social impact startups, there are always a tension between impact and then scaling up. How do you
Right.
balance that? Building a business and then also creating an impact. How do you balance this?
Correct. So this is a real challenge which we briefly touched earlier as well, especially in the assistive tech, because we need to have that balance that the end user also needs something that is affordable, that is impactful. It takes time for the adoption for the
Mm.
community. So it is not like a typical, of a commercial product where you quickly launch, you have very fast iteration rates, you keep changing the product continuously with the user requirement, because user requirements are also changing with time very quickly. So in assistive technology space, this adaptivity is different. There is requirement for slow changes. In fact, rather, usually our users don't want much change, because then it becomes challenging for them. If you all keep on changing the UI, it becomes very difficult for them as a visually impaired person to keep tackling what is the changed UI again and again. They need consistency, they need reliability, they need trust building, and these are all different as compared to a typical commercial product. Also, as I said, there is a need for patient capital, because the cycles are slow, the adoption is slow, the profits are not as compared to the commercial products there. So that all sort of understanding needs to be there even with the investors. And that's the reason it is very important for, as a founder, as a entrepreneur, that when you're looking for investments, go for someone who understand this domain, who understand what is the need for assistive technology, what are the challenges that as an entrepreneur that you will be facing, the kind of patience that will be required in terms of being profitable, being having that adoption being widely scalable. So while you're, and every technology is going to be different, so that is something founders needs to be careful. They need to judge themselves, evaluate, take some suggestions that can I do this by bootstrapping? If yes, go ahead with that. If the technology itself demands a lot of resources from the very beginning, then yes, then you need to have involvement from an investor. But then when you do that, make sure that you consider all of these facts. How many other assistive technologies they have invested in? Is that they're one of the primary focus area or sector or not? So these are the kind of things that a assistive tech startup needs to take care of, needs to think of while collaborating, while partnering. And so yes, so these are the aspect and the right balance that needs to be made,
Yeah.
because sustainability is there. You need to be careful about the pricing also. What is it is not about that we have got some funding, let's say from XYZ investor, and now I suddenly expand my team to 10-member, 20-member team, and let's build the develop product in 2 months. No, the 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 way cycle works in assistive technology is different, and that might not hold for everyone. But as I said, for specific product, it will be different. For specific product, it will be different. So rather go slow, go with user feedback, go with continuous iteration with users, and then go with the expansion, have that balance, and that will help you in the long run.
Sure. So building a startup itself a lonely journey, they used to say, and building an assistive tech requires a lot of patience. And as you said, we have to balance both sides, and we have to wait, and then we have to convince the people around us in this ecosystem also to believe in our product, gaining the trust. So I want to ask one last question. So one thing that you would start earlier if you have given a second chance, whether you will start this journey again, re-again, or what is your answer?
Uh, See, the one quick thing, as I said, is you cannot have an impact just based on technology or just based on your own silo, right? So for that impact creation, you need partnerships at any cost, at any level, whether it is financial partnerships, whether it is partnership with the domain that you are working in, whether it is partnership for management, whether it is compliance. Everything is very important, right? All of this. So you need to be connected from the beginning of your journey. You need to build those partnerships with your users, with your investors, with your potential, collaborators from the very beginning. And the earlier you do, the smoother is going to be, and the faster is going to be your journey, and you're going to save a lot of time, which otherwise you will specifically, dedicatedly spend otherwise, and that is going to cost you more time and efforts. So this is one thing I hope, if I wanted to start, I would have started with those partnerships way earlier in my journey, and that would have created much more impact much earlier in time. That's what I feel.
Great, great. Other, thank you so much. That was really insightful and honest. I can see how much you have been very patient in your journey, shifting from different background and then making a great impact in many of the lives. I'm sure that you will be reaching many, many heights. And as a fellow founder, I can also relate much of the information that you have said, much of the challenges and mistakes that you have said have been related to my journey also, and many of the starting founders also. And thank you so
Thank
much. And to
thank
listening everyone, if you are thinking building something meaningful, especially into the healthcare sector or even the assistive tech, I hope this conversation gave us some clarity and courage. Thank you for tuning in, and bye for next time. Thank you.
thank you very much, Kalaiarasi, and thank you, team. Much I appreciate for having me here. Take care.
Thank you.